Hi, I'm Chris from Airwindows, and I'm going to show you something called Righteous4 today. This is a plugin designed for letting you hit the volume targets of online platforms, or indeed if you pick a volume target that you think is going to work for your own mixes, whether or not it's a target for a platform, you can set that as well, and I'll show you how it works. Let's start with a piece of music like this, which is at the level it was mixed. And our volume target here is minus 13 dB. We'll start doing it, and we can see that we got a short-term one in here and a long-term one here. And we're not getting hot up to 13 dB. So what we would be wanting to do with this in order to make it hit that volume target is push the gain, and that will push it above the 0 dB, and then Righteous4 will soak that up. Specifically, it will take the just loudness in general that comes in, and it will start to distort and sound overloaded, feel a little bit too dense when it hits that 13 dB point. But it's not a normal sort of distorter or clipper or whatever. It's letting the peak energy through pretty well unrestricted. And what will happen with that is it's getting clipped by 80 clip, which means that the actual peaks recorded will never be above about minus 0.2. Now I will point out that doing that, if you push it hard enough at a high enough loudness target, you might get a true peak that is in excess of 0, because true peak is what happens when you're taking these samples, reconstructing them, and maybe there's a couple of samples that are so poked up high that the reconstruction goes right beyond where even the output of the converter is able to go. It does, however, attenuate those true peaks enough, and that's mostly 80 clip in here doing it, that I don't think you're going to find it objectionable sonically. Whether a streaming service finds it objectionable, like I think iTunes has restrictions about whether you're allowed to have true peaks, but iTunes also has a loudness target of minus 16 dB, so it's a lot harder to get them if you're using that. So let's turn it up so that it'll be the minus 13. Are you hearing how it's starting to get overly dense and saturated? That's because we've gone a little too far. We pulled it back so that it doesn't sound as intensely distorted, cleaned up right about that point, and when we play it now, it's still a little bit too hot, so let's try that again. And there we are at that level of gain boost, which is not very much gain boost. We're safely within the minus 13. But what if we had minus 16? I'll switch over to that, and you'll hear what happens to Righteous4 when we're changing the loudness target on the fly. We've got it set up to hit a target of minus 13. But if we tell it that the target is now 16, listen to what happens to the texture of the sound. Hear how it's a lot more distorted now? That's because we need to readjust the sound to clean it up, and that will put us very naturally in that minus 16 target. We're also going to see less in the way of these true peaks, but like I said, the actual peaks of the samples are no more than minus 0.2. Let's give this a whirl. 8 dB down. We could give it a little more, I think. Let's skip forward. We're sort of in the ballpark here. More. Now hear how it's starting to get overly dense? That's because we're starting to push past the target. Pull back. That sounds kind of cleaner. That's going to sneak down. Well, eventually it will. Yeah, that's too loud. I turn it down until it doesn't sound too loud anymore. And it stays neatly on the good side of the minus 16 that we set. What you do is listen for whether it's getting pushed too hard and pull it back until it's not. At that point, you're at exactly the loudness target that you want, but your peaks are also using up the maximum range that you could want. And it can go farther. For instance, supposing we were going to tell that the loudness target was 28 dB below 0. Super distort. You'd have to turn that down as well. And where are we at? We're pretty close to that minus 28. Just by ear. We can also skip over to a track like this one called Something Anything. Also, you'll note that if you have a lower loudness target, you're much less likely to get problems with the true peaks because the peaks will be let through, but you'd have to have such insanely hot peak. Well, this track has insanely hot peaks. Let's see what we get out of it. We'll go to the iTunes setting of minus 16 and roll. And we'll go to no boost. And you'll note that since this is such a peaky track, since it has so little girth and body to it, very different from the previous one, our loudness units are nowhere near the peak they could be. So what we can do is crank it up a bit. We're shooting for minus 16. We already see it. That's feeling distorted, and it's also looking distorted because we're over the target. So let's take that and pull it back until it's not going over, it's not distorting, and see how that goes relative to our target. Not even close. And that's a lot louder. And we're right near our target again. And then if this track had a loudness target of -23, it would start sounding like this. Notice something interesting though? The loudness units aren't changing all that much. This is giving auditory cues to the range you want to be in rather than overriding the bulk of the track and forcing it to be a particular level. It will show you where to be so that you can mix for it rather than peak limit and squish the track into shape. So what we're going to do is start at this -23 and go back to our 16. Listen to the change. And that's leaving lots of extra space in there. And just for fun, let's take this part and make it sit with the -13, which will involve making it a lot louder, and it will also involve clipping a bunch of the peaks because it's a very peaky track. Here's what we can get out of this for YouTube. I'm watching this short term. Look at that short term. And that got that section, which is kind of a quiet section, right up to the volume target for maximum YouTube loudness that you can have. We had a little bit of true peak because we're pushing it super hard. We were pushing 5 dB into Righteous. But output level of the actual samples never exceeded -0.2. Righteous4 is a nice little toy that I made for this purpose. And if you're mixing, for instance, if you're mixing on headphones, perhaps it'll be very easy to hear the levels that way. If you're mixing on laptops or if you're mixing in the box, this could be a very useful way of getting a loudness target and getting a sort of big, generous sound going on. One that has this built in, one that has 80 clip for the peak clipping, one that has not just another dither for the 16 and 24-bit dither levels. The 32-bit dither level is noise shaping to the floating point bus, like the rest of my plugins. And that's for if you're sending it to some kind of mastering engineer and you're actually saving a 32-bit file. If you're doing normal files, you'd be wanting to choose 24 or 16. I hope you like Righteous. It's a bit of a labor of love. I did it because I wanted to make something that would encourage people mixing with headroom. It lets through the headroom and only clips the most extreme peaks in a way that's not super obvious, but there's that area where you can feel it getting to the point of density where you don't want to push past the loudness target, and that can be whatever level you set, but it'll keep you honest. It'll be real obvious where the desired output level is going to be. And again, it's an audio unit, it's a VST, it's a Mac, it's a Windows, it's a Linux, it's a floor wax, it's a dessert topping, it's all of these things. And it even works on PPC Macs, because I've been saying that all day, making these videos. I don't know anybody else who's doing that right now, but they're still cool. I'm not sure if no, I do still have one. I have a PPC Mac upstairs. I haven't really been testing on it, but these are designed to work on whatever you've got. I do not believe in planned obsolescence. I believe in the airwindows plugins that you have should continue to be useful, and that shouldn't ever change. So I'm doing my best to do that. Given that I put out something like more than 100 plugins since I started doing the Patreon, that's a pretty big library of useful stuff for people to use. I hope you like them. Thank you.